Money FM 89.3, the best of Saturday mornings. Singapore Home Brew on Money FM 89.3.
As we usher in the year of the snake, no better time to get acquainted with our slithery friends and with a little help from the Mandai Wildlife Reserve. Joining us now, Luke Harding, the curator at the Mandai Wildlife Group, the chief herpetologist, if I'm not mistaken. Luke, welcome to the show.
Hey, fantastic. Thank you so much for having me here.
Tell us the first thing we should know about snakes.
They're fascinating creatures.
Okay.
Completely misunderstood. So snakes throughout generations, throughout all literature, have always been kind of misconceived and misrepresented as evil, as bad. So it's hard to link it back. A lot of beliefs, obviously, with danger, etc. But even into religious scripts, into cultural, even into children's movies, famous ones like The Jungle Book. Snakes have always been portrayed as evil, and a lot of it just comes through misunderstanding. So, snakes are actually benign, sensitive, fascinating creatures that
even the poison ones,
even the venomous ones. Yeah. So most venomous snakes, we live around them every single day here in Singapore, and yet the amount of bites, the amount of incidences you can barely recall, and that's just because these creatures don't want to do that. Snakes generally have a very important role in the ecosystem, and they just want to live alongside in peace. And what's really nice here in Singapore is we see that happening every day. So
we'll get into that. What's your story, Luke? I mean, I'm guessing you're from England. What's your story into snakes? How did you end up in Mandai as a herpetologist?
Yeah, so I was born in England and grew up in a family that loved nature. Same old story, really. They loved being outside, loved animals. And then someone gave me the wise advice that if you do what you love, then you never work a day in your life. Turns out that's not strictly true.
No.
You do work a lot of days, but I'm really fortunate that I managed to turn an interest that turned into a passion into a career. And that's... A lot of the time it's been based within zoological institutes, but also conservation. So I started out in UK zoological collections and then moved myself into the conservation sector. And I've worked all over the world, Madagascar, Africa, Indonesia, the Caribbean for the last few years, and then now had the opportunity to come here and join Mandai Wildlife Group, which is a fantastic organisation that's globally recognised for being leaders in this field, and to be here and have the opportunity to work with the team here and with my young team and capacity build for the future is really exciting.
What's your job with them? What do you do with them?
Yeah, so I'm the curator of herpetology, as they say, which is a fancy way of saying I look after all reptiles, amphibians, invertebrates, kind of all the forgotten, less charismatic creatures. So that's really exciting. And I manage two teams, the invertebrate team and the herpetology team, so around 19 staff in total. And, my job with them is to make sure that we're always holding the best standards and practices for the animals under our care, that we're contributing to capacity building, not just here in Singapore with our young team and training them to keep developing and become experts, but that we help contribute to wider impact for the animals we look after.
How many animals in that sphere do you actually have across the Mandai group?
So in our sphere, so for instance, for reptiles, we have over 90 species in total, and over 1,500 individual animals. So,
wow.
And they're really important populations that are under our care. A lot of them have high insurance. Some of the species, such as Roti Island snakeneck turtles, are extinct in the wild. We have one of the key insurance colonies of those species, and we're very proud to have been involved in repatriating them back to their country, and they're soon to be back to the wild, which is just a really exciting example of some of the great works that institutes like Mandai do.
Fabulous. Well, let's talk about some of the misconceptions. You mentioned their Jungle Book. They've never had a good time in literature. They're seen as sly and devious and cunning. And in the real world, they're going to bite you. They're going to spit at you.
Yeah.
You mentioned those chances are very, very slim in Singapore. I've been here 25 plus years. Glenn's been here. I've never really known anybody suffer serious issues with a snake. Tell us about some of the common misconceptions.
Yeah, so I think a lot of the common misconceptions, like you say, come from this just inherent fear, that people have from young about the dangers of snakes, and a lot of it's just misconceptions, like if they hood up they're going to bite you, and if you bite you die instantly, and that snakes hunt people and all these things, and it's just not true. Even down to venomous snakes. No, venom was not designed as a weapon against people. We just like to put ourselves as centre of importance quite a lot in conversations.
with everything.
Venom is an aid for digestion. So no, these snakes want to be left alone, and I think if you respect wildlife, which the laws here really help encourage, and people seem to have that for the most part, like you say, ever improving. These animals just want to be left alone. They don't want conflict. If you imagine, even for a lot of our biggest species, how big we are in comparison to snakes. You know, if something 30 times your size tried to pick you up, you'd have a nervous moment about it as well. So, you know, we have to take into account these actions. And, you know, I think as long as we're respectful of that and safe around wildlife, then, you know, they're no more dangerous or have no more potential to be dangerous than any of the other species. But,
and we've gotten lucky, I think, over the decades, because we have organizations like Acres, we have organizations like, the N Parks that are willing and able and will show up on a moment's notice if people notify them for any kind of animal, but of course snakes included. Like this one in Ang Mo Kio, for example. Did you see that case in the newspaper?
I saw that case. I've seen a few. It's really nice to be part of that group. You know, we work very closely with Acres and N Parks as well, and they do some fantastic work, not just for snakes, but for a lot of wildlife. And I think that gaining the public's trust is really important in them using those resources, because we do understand that people that have children outside playing don't necessarily want a venomous snake there. But really nice to see that progression, that rather than try to deal with that themselves, which is when a lot of people get themselves injured, that actually not only do they call professionals, but they also respect the animals and allow them to be moved. Those animals go about their lives. So yeah, a really nice example, like you said earlier, of everybody collaborating to make that a successful interaction.
And timely with the holiday this week.
Yeah. What a year to talk about it. It's nice.
One of the things we were looking at was your scheduled Keeper Talk session that apparently is featuring a king cobra at the Singapore Zoo. What can you tell us about that?
Yeah, so we're really excited because obviously it's the year of the snake. Happy Lunar New Year to everybody listening. But it's a really unique chance to talk about these species. You know, we get a chance to put snakes on a pedestal and shine a light on them. And there's no better species to do that with than king cobras. Singapore is incredibly fortunate to have a wild population of king cobras. They're these remarkable, misunderstood, charismatic, iconic snakes. So as part of trying to draw people in and use this year as a chance, we are doing keeper interactions with some of our non-venomous snakes and getting people closer, because there's a lot of misconceptions like snakes are slimy. And so to be able to bring people up close to these animals is really key. And then, we have a feed and talk session for our king cobras that are under our care. And again, that's just a unique chance for people to see just how intelligent, gentle, and misconception that these animals get labelled with, because the kings are really calm and under our care. We look after them, we give them what they need, and they thrive. And it's nice to be able to bring people closer to that and answer some of these questions, especially for the kids that have a lot of misconceptions. It's nice to be able to be there, and when they hear from our staff and from us, it helps change people's mindsets while still being respectful of what those animals are.
And I think it's worth you saying to Singaporeans how lucky we are in Singapore. I think we have 60 plus different types of snake, species of snake in Singapore. I know I've seen the tree snake, the pit viper, obviously I've seen the cobra, I've seen the oriental whip snake. Just explain to Singaporeans the depth and breadth of snakes we have in Singapore and how fortunate we are to have them in such close proximity.
Yeah, for sure. I grew up in the UK where we only have 3 native species. Half the year you can't see them because it's too cold. And the rest of the time, and they're nowhere near to the diversity and scale that we have. And Singapore has some incredible species. People travel from all over the world to see Singapore's wildlife and green spaces. And I think that that's something we should be incredibly proud of. And it hasn't hindered development, and urbanization is still happening, but they're doing it in a way, and we hopefully will continue to do it in a way that allows for both things to happen. And I think that's something they should be incredibly proud of, but also incredibly protective to make sure that future generations also get to, walk in Bukit Timah, walk in these places and see these species. Because without that effort and without continued pressure, then we are at risk of losing them species. And I think it's really important that we don't allow that to happen.
Yeah, we're talking with Luke Harding, the curator at Mandai Wildlife Group, the chief herpetologist. Luke, what value are snakes bringing to our ecosystem? You mentioned we have a lot of different kinds of snakes in Singapore. Why are they important for making sure that our green spaces stay good and our natural environment stays, in a positive state?
So different species play different roles, but all snakes do play an important function in the ecosystem. So a lot of snakes are very key in keeping down rodent populations, which especially in human inhabited areas tends to increase. So you would see a lot more rodents if it wasn't for snakes. But also other pests like the king cobras then in turn keep down the snake numbers, because one of their primary feed sources is snakes. So it's all interlinked. And, quite often with a lot of species now, we just don't understand enough about the impact on the ecosystem when we remove those species. So my goal is let's keep as many as we can in that ecosystem. They all play roles. Science and technology is really just allowing us to more and more understand those roles and how interconnected everything is, and just how devastating an impact just removing one species can be. So, and we've already lost so many as a world. The extinction crisis is real, it's happening, and places like Singapore can lead the way in trying to halt that and make sure that this region stays species rich and diverse.
I'm so glad you said the rodent thing. Yeah, because I love animals, I'm a tree hugging vegetarian, but I do suffer from zoophobia, which is a fear of rodents and rats. And whenever someone says about snakes, I say they eat rats. That is the greatest thing about the snake. They eat rats, and the more they do it, the better. All right, so we talked about there's a bit of negative publicity in literature and so on, and yet snakes still remain extraordinarily popular. When you go to Singapore Zoo and other parts of the world, you'll always see the kids gathered around that exhibit more than any other. What is it about snakes that are so popular? And do you see this yourself at Mandai?
Yeah, I think to some degree it's the unknown. I think that we don't understand a lot about them, and that fascinates people. And I think that misunderstanding and misconceptions, that fear that people have regarding them, sometimes it's kind of like facing that. That's certainly one of the reasons that we find under human care snakes are popular, because people want to be like, I was brave enough to go and stand by it. But I think with children it's a fascination, and unfortunately, often as adults or as seniors, we actually turn that into negative connotation. I've never met a child scared of snakes inherently on their own. It's always the parents that are scared of snakes. So there's got to be a line. We also want to treat these animals with respect, and children need to be taught that. But at the same time, we're there to engage and inspire. And that's the power that places like Mandai can have, because you can read these things, see them on TV and books, but nothing comes quite as close, as powerful as being able to get up close and really understand about them. And that's what's great about these talks and activities now, is you get to speak to the keepers who look after these animals daily, and that connection and that personal bond is really special, and it comes across when you speak to them. And if you speak to passionate people, I think you pick up that passion, and that stays with people. So
when we look at snakes in the Chinese New Year context, the reptile symbolizes intelligence, knowledge, intuition, wisdom, creativity. It's able to shed its skin for further growth and represents transformation. I mean, these are actually some very positive messages when you look at the horology of it, in the Chinese New Year concept.
That's what's so exciting about this. It's one of the few calendar events, if you will, that celebrates snakes as something positive. So very excited to be here for it this year, and like I say, be able to capitalize on that and really get people excited about snakes.
So you have the at the Mandai Wildlife Group, of course, there is the Singapore Zoo, there is also the night safari, and then the river safari. What's the difference in the snakes that we see in those three environments?
Yeah, so we do have different species that are adapted to different areas. So we have some of our nocturnal species that are primarily active at night. So that'll be our racer snakes and our carpet pythons at our night safari. And then we look to our river wonders, our river zoo, which is where we have our anacondas and our species more adapted. So a lot of our zoos specialize in telling the journey, stories and learnings from different habitats around the world, and we try to put the correct species in there to showcase that.
Brilliant.
Showcase that diversity.
I know you're professional and you say you love them all equally, but do you have any favourites? When you go to work, do you think, she or he, absolute beauty, that one?
This is like choosing your favourite child.
Exactly.
It shouldn't be allowed. I think that king cobras are something that's quite inspiring. Their level of intelligence seems to be pretty unparalleled to other snakes.
In what way? How do we know this?
So it's almost, the best way to describe it is like they know what's going on. When you're working with them, they know when you're calm, when you're not. They watch, they never strike and miss, they always know where they're aiming. They are a really intelligent snake, and just really calm. When you're calm with them, they're calm with you. They're just something, the presence of being around them really is quite special. But there's so many. Reticulated pythons are here as well. Singapore really is a hub for diversity, and so many of the species are beautiful. So
with the king cobra, and we don't want to encourage people to try this, but if you're just around them, let's say at the zoo, and you're handling them, and you're just calm with them and moving slowly, they don't strike out of habit.
No, so I think it's important to say, firstly, people shouldn't be trying to handle them. If you see them in the wild, then just stay a safe distance and observe and watch.
Call a professional.
Yeah, or call a professional if you do have to move them. That's first and foremost. And I would say that myself and my team are professionals. We're trained to handle them. Like any animal under human care, they've got the potential to bite. And if they do, the consequence obviously is more severe. So we don't take any chances. But no, if we pride ourselves on how we safely handle, in the internet, YouTube, things can give quite a bad impression of reptiles and snake handling. We have very professional procedures and methods used that aren't just safe for us, but also make it much more enjoyable and friendly for the snakes. And primarily, we give them choice. So our animals have a bed area or a den area, and we call them in and they come into that, and we can lock them in and we can do the work, and then we let them out, and it's all choice, and the animals choose to participate. So we're very proud of the standards that we keep on that, and but they're still dangerous, so we do make sure that we're always professional and that all our teams are trained to do that. The same as N parks and acres. So again, just no one should attempt to become complacent just because these animals seem calm. We don't want any risk. Please leave them alone and reach out to people who are trained to do that.
Speaking of professionalism, I've seen over the years with snakes in road accidents or whatever, they often end up at Mandai to see some of your experts for rescue and rehabilitation, not just all species, reptiles, mammals and so on. What is the role that Mandai plays in that sort of rescue and rehabilitation?
Yes, so we're really lucky to have a world-class veterinary team. We really do. Hopefully they're listening to this. See, I was being nice, but no, they do a fantastic job. We're really lucky. We have some of the largest data sets on some of our native species, such as pangolins, reticulated pythons, king cobras. So our goal is to protect as much of our native wildlife as we can. So we bring it in, we do our rehabilitation, and then we work with our partners in N parks, acres, and other places to make sure that these species get a second chance and go back out into the wild, and hopefully that we continue to look at, study, gather that data to look at mitigating risks to make sure that, hopefully we don't see repeat incidences of these things that bring them to us. But generally speaking, we don't win all, but we try our best, and we have a huge impact for a small place. Singapore does a lot of great work.
Fabulous.
All right, final few words here. First, why should we love snakes in this year of the snake and always? Secondly, what's something that people should do if they happen to see one in their neighborhood?
Okay, so you should love snakes because they need it. They're still misrepresented, they're still underloved. And this should be a great year with everything going on in the world at the moment to love things that haven't been till now. So go out there, learn about them. If you're not sure, if this hasn't convinced you hearing me, then come to the zoo, come and visit us. And I promise you, when you see them up close, when you speak to the staff, come and see me in person and you'll have a wonderful time learning about snakes. As far as your neighbourhood, I think where possible, we should let the animals live alongside us. If it's in green spaces, if it's safe, then please leave these snakes alone. They won't cause harm, let them move on. If it's in an area where the snake shouldn't be, or it does pose a risk, or you don't feel comfortable, then please contact professional bodies, whether that be Mandai, acres, or N parks, and people will be able to advise and work with you.
And brilliant. Anyone wants to know more about activities at the Mandai Wildlife Reserve, where should they go?
Please go and check out our website. You can find all our activities there. We also follow us on social media. There's lots to do at the moment to visit our parks during Lunar New Year. We've got our new Mandai Boardwalk open, which is a fantastic experience that you can come and do. Please check us out on social media, our website, or contact at the zoo for more details.
And I think you also have this website, Wild CNY, if I'm not mistaken, wildcny.sg, which talks about all the Chinese New Year things to see at Mandai. So if people can remember that as well. Hey, Luke, thank you very much for being with us today.
No problem. Thank you so much.
Luke Harding, curator at Mandai Wildlife Group.
To listen to more great interviews, download our podcasts at audio.sg or download the audio app. That's AWEDIO, audio at the App Store and Google Play.